Her name is Noor. Aged 18 months old, she's thirsty and desperately hungry. Her mother has travelled with her for days to get here. Inside Wajir Hospital, almost every child is suffering from malnutrition. It hasn't rained heavily here within any of their lifetimes. Some are very tiny and frail. Others are bloated, their skin peeled away by their condition and in need of help.
They really need it urgently. It's a matter of urgency, and some of them they cannot even wait for a second.
On our journey into the district of Wajir, the green landscape soon turned to desolate grey. By the roadside, evidence of the slow drift of drought and death. Cattle, even a giraffe, apparent victims. Then, these men who'd walked for 4 days to get supplies for their animals. His container will barely keep him going for the journey back. But there are many more people moving town and even country, some escaping war in Somalia as well as the drought. Right now, across the Horn of Africa, there are millions of people on the move, mothers who've taken their children and a few possessions to walk more than 100 miles to get basic treatment at a centre like this one. The journey has been painful, but staying at home would have been much more so. This woman says that the drought killed her cattle, so she's moving south with her family in search of water and food. This is not quite a famine, not yet. Its causes were complex, natural and man-made, but its consequence has been simple and painful. Rohit Kachroo, ITV News, Wajir. Some have come with everything they own. Others seem totally alone, lost among the exodus. Their journeys have been long, exhausting, and often distressing. The world's largest refugee camp gets a little larger every minute. 1,500 a day come here, fleeing war and drought. To get here, Abi Gradi has walked for 24 days with her 5 children. Along her journey from Somalia, she was joined by other families crossing the border. This woman left her home with her 12-year-old son, but arrived alone. He collapsed from hunger and died on the way. Nearby, the youngest, frailest refugees are taken for treatment. Some are just a few weeks old. They might have got here just in time, but their short lives are still in danger. Outside, food is distributed to the hungry crowd. For so many people, this will be the first real meal that they've eaten for several days. The rations are small, the camp is overcrowded, and yet many people are so happy to be here. But look at what they've escaped to. An area of northern Kenya where pressure for water is so great that a lake nearby is now totally dry, where a water tank lies empty, destroyed in a fight for the final few drops.
If they're willing to walk for weeks without food, they risk armed attack, they risk being attacked by wild animals even. It shows the levels of desperation in places that have been affected by this drought.
And so in a few months, 500,000 refugees would have made this their home. Rohit Kachroo, ITV News, Northern Kenya. More than 1,000 new refugees today. As Somalia inched towards famine, the population of their new home edged towards that of a large city with its own morning rush. The city has now grown its own commuter village, formed in terrible conditions by desperate people. There are more arriving all the time. But many are stuck, unable to make the final few miles to the main camp, where there's a proper supply of food and water. The people who live here haven't been placed here. They've chosen to come. They've created their own community because the pressure in the main camp is so great. Muslima is waiting for space there to free up. She tells me that to get here, she walked for an entire month from northern Somalia with her 5 children. But along the way, she took on another child because his mother died from hunger as they travelled south together. Families have been reformed along the way. There are now only a few miles left of this journey, but when they'll make it, they still don't know. Rohit Kachroo, ITV News, Northern Kenya.